Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Crossroads Soccer Show right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. My name is Nate Bukaty. Matt Besler is my co-host for this show, and the two of us are going to take you all the way through the biggest event to ever come to Kansas City, the World Cup, here in 2026. The Crossroads Soccer Show is presented by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City. From here, for wherever you are, that's the benefit of blue. Visit bluekc.com/benefit of blue for more information. We also want to thank our sponsor, Michelob Ultra, the official beer sponsor of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And we are so excited to be starting this show, Matt. Me and you, I feel like this is a show that's been 16 years in the making. That's probably when we met each other, right? About 2010.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it was about what? Was it your rookie year? Rookie year or sophomore year, probably, that we started doing stuff here at 810 together.
Yeah, I've been coming in here for a long time, but I think this idea has we've talked about this idea for probably a year or two since we ever found out that the World Cup is coming to the United States and coming to Kansas City. And so I personally just want to thank all of our sponsors as well, especially Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They've been a partner of mine for a very long time. We do a program called Blue KC Sporting Samaritan, and we're 10 years into it. So they've been incredible partners, and this show wouldn't happen without them. So thanks for making it happen. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you in the studio and breaking down the U.S. team and talking about all things World Cup and maybe diving into some stories that you've unveiled with your book that's coming out. So we got a lot of fun things to talk about through the course of the next couple months.
That partnership with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City, they've been great partners of Sports Radio 810 WHB. You talked about the Sporting Samaritan program. I get to kind of dip my toe in that because every month when you guys honor the Samaritans, we do an interview with them that airs on Sports Radio 810. But you take these Samaritans to a game. You give them this like incredible behind-the-scenes all-access tour of the stadium. They get honored on the field and all those things, and then I get to jump in and do the interview with you afterwards. But that program has really been awesome because it puts us face-to-face with some of the real heroes in the community, the school teachers out there that are making a difference. But you can tell how much the program means to them as well. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great program. Like I said, we're 10 years in, so we're doing something right. But the thing I love about Blue KC, honestly, with this program is we'll take an idea to them and say, well, what do you think about this? Can we add this to the program? Can we spend a little more money here? Yes. It's always a yes, let's do it. They want to enhance the program as best they can because the teachers deserve it. It really is. It's all about the teachers. They're the ones that deserve the recognition, and they don't get enough recognition. So I feel very honored and grateful to be a part of that program because I enjoy it probably just as much as the teachers.
So you mentioned being in the studio. That's where we're doing this first episode, but we're going to take this show on the road, too. As we get closer and closer to the World Cup, we're going to be out and about. I'm hoping we get to check out the new digs, the new offices. Like when you go downtown and you see the Blue Cross and Blue Shield building, that I haven't been inside there yet, but it looks like an incredible place. I mean, it's transformed like the downtown skyline a little bit.
It's an amazing building, yeah. I've been there inside a few times for some meetings and some brainstorming sessions for shows like this, and it's a place where you just want to hang out at. You just look around. It's a spectacular building. It's beautiful.
So, okay, through the course of the build-up to the World Cup and through the World Cup, as you said, we're going to break down the actual competition itself, the U.S. men's national team, what our expectations are, what we think of them. We're going to go down memory lane a little bit because this man, Matt, between the two of us, we've started in 4 World Cup games. Is that right?
That's correct.
Between the two of us, we've done that. Every match in the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. And that was something that for those of us that have been around here long enough that got to kind of go on that ride with you, I think it's really going to be fun to take a trip down memory lane. It's hard for me to believe that was 12 years ago, but it was. So a lot's happened. You've raised a family, or you're raising a family since then. Same with me. So we'll kind of rewind the clock. We'll go down memory lane. We're going to have so many great guests on the show from particularly the soccer landscape in Kansas City that needs to be celebrated as well. So that's all coming up as we continue on the show. But let's get this started, Matt, by kind of talking about how we got here, in the first place. And when I say how we got here, I want to talk about how you got here, how you and I got here, but also as a city. You know, how this town, and that is the subject of my book, as you said, so I've done a lot of research on this, but how did a town in the middle of the country that really didn't have that much of a soccer history or culture to speak of maybe 40 years ago, outside of some niche pockets, that is so much smaller than every other city that's involved in this World Cup, come to become like the epicenter of this? Not just the 6 games, but the national teams that are base camping here, the biggest countries in the world, all deciding to compete to get to stay here. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. We could probably spend the entire episode looking back and going through the timeline of events, but I think there's a few common themes, and it's punching above our weight, and it's our ability to come together as a city, as leaders, and make stuff happen. I'll share one little anecdote with you, and I've told you this story before, but I realized that there was a bias against Kansas City at a pretty early age. When I was 11 or 12 years old, I started traveling to play soccer, and I was part of the Olympic Development Program, ODP. It was a program where you would try out for your state team. If you made your state team, you would go and play at the regional level, and then if you made your regional team, you'd go and try out for the national level. And so our region was filled with kids from St. Louis, Chicago, Michigan, Ohio, Des Moines. I could go down the list. So I made the Kansas State team, and we'd go and travel and play in these regional tournaments. And I was the only kid at the time to make the regional team from Kansas. And I got bullied. I got bullied because I was from Kansas on those teams. Oh, yeah. The kids had no idea that Kansas City even existed. And to me, it was eye-opening because up until that point, Kansas City was all that I knew.
Yeah.
I thought it was the greatest city in the world. It was the biggest city, and I'd had everything that I needed as a kid. But then when I started traveling outside of the city, especially in the soccer world, I realized very quickly there's a bias. And people looked down at Kansas City when it came to soccer. People thought that there's no way that I could play. They would ask me questions like, do you guys even have tournaments in Kansas City? Do you have teams? Do you guys practice on the farm? Do you practice next to cows? Do you know this? I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? It's just like you. And hey, Matt, how come you don't have an accent? I thought you'd have a Southern accent. You're from Kansas. Like, nope, I'm just from Kansas City. No accent here. But honestly, that continued throughout my career, and I always carried that chip on my shoulder. And I think that still exists today. When you look at kind of what happened here with us getting the World Cup, and there's no way Kansas City's going to get it. We're the smallest market, and you got all these other cities ahead of us. But somehow we come together and we unite, and that's what makes us strong. And like I said, we punch above our weight. So I don't know if you have any specific comments to kind of the story of how we got it, or maybe some stories that you remember the process of us being awarded the World Cup.
Definitely. One thing that you said there that stood out to me was when you talked about the accent. Because one of the things that when I went to write the book, I had some preconceived notions of my own. Like, okay, I know why I think Kansas City pulled this off, but I'm going to ask everybody else that was involved. And one of the things that became really clear to me was the defining characteristic to me of this town more than anything is that it is right in the middle. It's the crossroads of America. And so like the people that thought, oh, you're going to have an accent like a Southern accent. It's funny because in broadcasting, you talk about what people thought of you as a soccer player. For me as a broadcaster, when I started to travel, around the rest of the country, one of the things that people would actually say is, you don't have an accent. And I remember a professor in college calling it a non-regional dialect. And it's actually like he said it's actually great to grow up right in the middle of the country because you don't have an exaggerated accent from the Northeast. Somebody that comes from Boston actually has a pretty strong accent. Somebody that comes from the South has a pretty deep accent. Somebody that comes from the West Coast has a certain way that they talk. And in the middle, we're kind of just like a combination of all of it. And that kind of defines the city as a whole. It's a really hard place to put your finger on. And I think that's one of the reasons that people from the outside look at Kansas City and think they know what it is. And then they get here and they discover, wow, this is a much more complicated place than I would have guessed. It's a much more vibrant place and culturally rich, and it has a lot more to offer than I would have guessed. And I think it actually, you hear a lot of times people say things. Mayor Lucas, when I interviewed Quentin Lucas for the book, he said, I think the word was, if you're looking for the definitive story of the 2026 World Cup, it's the Kansas City story. And I got to be honest, when he said it, I was like, well, that's what the mayor of any town would say when his town's hosting the World Cup, right? What makes this more American than any other place? And I actually, the more I looked into it, the more I realized, because we're the cross-section of the whole country. You get New York when you go to New York, which is a wonderfully diverse place and has people from all over the world, but it's very New York. If you go to L.A., you're getting a very different experience, right? And you come to Kansas City, and you're getting this kind of crossroads of all of it. So it is kind of this great indicator of what the country as a whole is. We're complicated. We're incredibly divided in a lot of ways, but we have this amazing capacity to unify when we want to, when we're motivated, when we feel a common cause. And that's this town, right? It's divided at the outset by a civil war, yet, especially when it comes to our sports teams, nobody comes together like we do in this town to make really cool things happen. So that was a long answer to your question, but I think that's like what I learned, and that doesn't even get into the soccer, but I do think everything that's happened with soccer in this town, from Lamar Hunt or to the immigrants that originally brought soccer here, to the Comets, to Lamar Hunt, to the rebrand, the Cliff Illig and Neil Pattersons of the world, to Chris and Angie Long of the Current, to the people that are running this World Cup right now, it's all kind of that ethos of these like earnest Midwestern people that have a vision to try to make something special happen and kind of try to get the attention of the rest of the world to say, hey, you should take a look at what we're doing over here because it's actually a lot cooler than you think. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happened. I think if we rewind, the World Cup gets announced. It's coming to the U.S. and Mexico and Canada, but it's coming here in 2026, whenever that was. That was a long, long time ago. And then I think there's certain people, and you've mentioned a couple of them, but there's a handful of people that deserve huge credit for making this all happen. And I don't want to go down the list because I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody.
Right.
But we can maybe get into some of those people, and I'm sure they're going to come on the show. But I think that when the moment that the U.S. got awarded the World Cup, I think that's when the wheels started turning. And they said, what do you think? Wouldn't it be great if Kansas City could host, if we were a host city? And, yeah, it's probably a small chance, but, like, let's start the process. And we threw our name into the hat. And so I think what happened there was we kept moving forward, and we kept progressing, and we kept – there was other cities that would drop out, and Kansas City was just still there. And what happened from there was FIFA started visiting Kansas City. And I think that's when it became real, and I think people realized, like, oh my gosh, we have a shot at this. And there's a couple great stories from when FIFA visited that I'd like to share. I'm sure you know a couple of them too, but one of my favorites, and this came from Cliff Illig, he told me this a couple weeks ago, was when FIFA came to visit Kansas City, we had people from KC 2026 pick them up at the airport in their personal cars and drive them around the city and drop them off at their hotel and check in with them via text message and pick them up the next day and drop them back off at the airport. He told me that didn't happen in other cities.
Yeah.
He said that they got a car service and they didn't check in and you're on your own and we'll see you tomorrow morning. We went above and beyond with our hospitality, with making people feel welcomed and making people feel comfortable. And I think that's what we're all about. He also told me an incredible story as well, that when FIFA arrived, right, we have this new airport. That was one of the big points about if we're going to get this World Cup, we've got to get an airport done.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that for lots and lots of times. And we got it done. It's incredible. It's a great airport. But they were still a little bit worried about how it was going to be perceived by FIFA. So when FIFA came to fly in, we actually staged about a couple hundred people to go to the airport and just roam around and hang out. and they were acting like they were shopping or they were on layovers, so that when the people from FIFA came in, they didn't arrive to an empty, dead airport. Mm-hmm. They walked in, and the energy in the airport, and people were walking around, and they were impressed by the airport. That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
The details that went into organizing that, the thought of, wait, why don't we do this? Why don't we stage it like that? And it worked. You know, FIFA came in, and they were impressed by the hospitality. I also think they visited in June, and from what I heard, we had 3 straight days of 70-degree weather with no humidity, which FIFA was like, the weather here's great.
Yeah.
Like, June, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And everybody was just holding their breath like, oh, boy, you wait till next June.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think those stories are amazing, but again, just so much credit has to be given to the people that made this happen. And now we're here. You know, now Kansas City got announced. Do you have any memories of when we were awarded?
Yeah.
The bid.
Couple things on that. Number one, this actually, and this is a recurring theme in Kansas City as well, and with soccer, but also a lot of other things in this town. Persistence about an idea that a lot of other people think is foolish. This is actually the 3rd time that Kansas City has tried to get the World Cup. Lamar Hunt tried to get FIFA to bring the World Cup to Kansas City back in 1994, the first time, and I interviewed Clark Hunt for it, and he remembers being a kid and his dad, showing him around the facility, the FIFA guys, and they're like, yeah, Kansas City is no international airport. It didn't really get very far. Then, if you remember, when the World Cup got announced for Russia, the United States was a part of that bid, and Kansas City at that time was going to be one of the cities. They had already predetermined. U.S. Soccer was going to determine which cities got it, and we all gathered around at the 810 zone down on the plaza, and then the U.S. didn't get the bid. And then the next time when U.S. does get the bid, now every city's got a bid to FIFA, and that brings in the whole scenario that you just told. So this is another case of we got an idea, shot down. We're going to do it. We're going to keep trying. We're not going to give up. And that's what's happened with the Wizards becoming sport in Kansas City, the financing for the stadium, the KC Current, just this persistence of an idea, even in the face of adversity and skepticism and failure, and just kind of like, no, we believe this is going to happen. We're going to keep going until we get it done. And that's what happened here. When you talk about the day that it happened, I got to host the watch party in the Power and Light District, and we had a watch party. I don't know if any of the other cities had. I mean, I think they might have had some gatherings, but what other place had thousands of people show up to celebrate them reading off names of a city? You know,
there was no guarantee either.
Right.
I remember thinking about
Yeah, that's
that.
a
I
great
love
point.
the idea.
Yeah.
That's what Kansas City does. We come together and we celebrate, but there was no guarantee that we were going to get awarded the bid. So imagine us not getting the bid, and you're down there at Power and Light trying to rally the troops, and like, what did that ever cross your mind?
That's the absolute conversation I had. The guy that was the VP of marketing, or I think that was his title, but my boss, the marketing, the guy in charge of marketing at Sporting Kansas City, his name was Aaron Borns. He called me and said, "Hey, we want to have a party for this announcement. Would you host it?" And I said, "So we're getting it, right? Like, wink, wink. Like, you wouldn't put me up on stage in front of all these people because I remembered what had happened the last time at the 810 zone." And he said, "We're very optimistic, but we don't know. Nobody's told us anything. They're keeping it very close to the vest." And to this day, I have still not found a single person to tell me that they knew. Everybody I've talked to, from Cliff Illig to Clark Hunt, and if you see the picture of Cliff and Clark, it's on the back of the book, by the way, they're celebrating, and Cliff's wife Bonnie's there. The look on their face doesn't look like the faces of two guys that already knew they had it in the bag. It looks like guys that are celebrating, holy cow, we did it. So either they're the greatest actors ever, or nobody really knew. And so I remember being up there just like, man, they better like this thing, because I don't want to be up here, you know, if we don't get the bid. So yeah, that definitely crossed my mind.
We were on the road. I was playing for Sporting KC at the time, and we were in Vancouver. So we were outside the United States,
wow.
But I remember we were just about to travel to the game, and we were all on the bus, the team bus, and we were surrounded by a little cell phone, and we were all tuning in. And I'm telling you, man, like the nerves watching that video rivaled, or maybe even they were more than the game that we were about to play. And when we found out that Kansas City was awarded the bid, I mean, we erupted in the bus and we celebrated like we just won a game, traveling to Vancouver, and it was a great feeling for sure.
Last member I have on this, we'll take a break and we'll fast forward to what comes next. But a lot of people went up to No Other Pub to celebrate. That's where Cliff and Clark Hunt were at that time, and a lot of the dignitaries. I was down on stage, and somebody invited me to come up, and so I went up and was, celebrating with people, and they said, hey, a few of us are going to go down to the Sporting Kansas City offices. We're going to have a glass of scotch and a cigar to celebrate this up on the roof. And their offices at the time were right down there in the Crossroads, kind of by where, like, the Jack Stack and Lydia's are. And the people that I remember, and I still have a photo of it, Kathy Nelson, the CEO and person that's in charge of the Kansas City Sports Commission, Visit KC, Catherine Holland, who was in charge of KC 2026 at the time, Jake Reed, the president and CEO of Sporting Kansas City, Chad Reynolds, who was in marketing, part of the Save the Wizards group that ended up working in marketing for Sporting Kansas City for years to come. And there were other people there, but I just remember those are the guys that are in the picture. And I remember saying, we got to get a picture because this is a night that's going to change the history of the town. And we were looking across the downtown skyline, and that skyline is so different today, or in a couple years ago when this announcement happened, than before the Sprint Center's now T-Mobile T-Mobile Center was built. Downtown didn't look anything like it looks now. And so that moment led to like a transformation in the city, right? And so I said, look at this skyline now. How different is this town going to look in 10, 15, 20 years from now because of what just happened today? And we just kind of thought about it. I don't know that anybody had an answer, but we just kind of looked across from the Western Auto Building all the way to downtown. You could see it all from up there. And I remember thinking to myself, first of all, what am I doing up here with these people? Like I'm like the mayor's here. Yeah, Mayor Lucas was there. The presidents and CEOs of these big, and I was like just a nerdy kid that went to Comets games as a kid, and here I am getting to hang out with this group of people that made this thing happen. So on that note, I think I remember Kathy Nelson saying, well, now the work starts. Okay, we did all this work to get this, but that wasn't really the work. The work starts now. We got to get ready for a World Cup. And it's an almost impossible task. So maybe we'll break here, and the next segment we'll talk about that part of it, like getting ready for this World Cup, because you and I have been a part of a lot of conversations, right, since then. So that's it. This is the first segment. This is the Crossroads Soccer Show. Why? Well, Kansas City is the crossroads of America. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff down in the Crossroads, the great district in Kansas City that is right across, a stone's throw from where the Fan Fest is going to be and all that. And it's Matt Besler and me, and we'll be right back after this on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Welcome back to the Crossroads Soccer Show. I'm Matt Besler, joined by my co-host Nate Bukaty. We are on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Crossroads Soccer Show is presented by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City. From here to wherever you are, that's the benefit of blue. Visit bluekc.com/benefitofblue for more information. Show's also brought to you by our good friends at Michelob Ultra, the official beer sponsor of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. All right, Nate, so first episode, we just spent some time talking about the bid and Kansas City getting awarded the bid. You shared a great story about that night and celebrating with some of our leaders in this city, Kathy Nelson being one of them, and her comment was, congrats, now the work really begins. So let's get to work. So the incredible amount of work that it's taken over the last couple years, fast forward, we're 50-something days out from the World Cup. Where do you want to start? Because there's a lot of things we can talk about that went into getting us ready, not only getting us ready, but being leaders out of all the host cities. That's something that I continually hear when you are comparing how we're doing versus other cities. People are looking to Kansas City at, well, how did you all get that done? How do you already have a Fan Fest planned? What can we be doing to get up to par with you in Kansas City? So I'll throw it to you of where you want to start.
It's such a good question because the one thing I get from people all the time is, are we going to be ready? I don't think we're ready. And my answer is, I don't think anybody can be ready. I think you get as ready as you can. But the good thing is that from all the people I talk to, we're more ready than everybody else. And I have had a chance to talk to other people from different cities that are involved in this. One example is, I get to go out to New York City every once in a while to do work for Galazzo Network, CBS Sports. It's in Stamford, Connecticut, but that's a New York suburb, basically. And while I was out there, I got an email last summer from Pam Kramer, who's the CEO of KC 2026 now, saying, hey, I'm in New York for a big summit that they're doing in Manhattan. All of the delegates from the different, from the 16 host sites, I think it was the 11 United States host sites, not the ones from Mexico and Canada. They're all doing a big, and it was Roger Bennett from Men in Blazers kind of hosted a round table, and they would bring out, the equivalent of Pam Kramer from Philadelphia and Miami, and then they brought out some people from FIFA to talk about all the things they're trying to do to prepare. And so they had a little coffee and donuts type thing beforehand, like a reception, and I was going around talking to people, and they were saying the same thing. Whenever we have a question, we call the FIFA folks, and they say, well, call Kansas City. They're already done with that. And you've seen news reports that have come out lately about how much it's going to cost you to get from Boston out to, to Foxborough. I was trying to remember what they call the stadium now because they can't call it, whatever the name is now, Boston Stadium or whatever it's going to be called, but Foxborough, Massachusetts, which is, it's a haul to get out there, and it's going to cost you a ton of money apparently, and there's all these, challenges. And then they come out with the transportation plan in Kansas City where they procured all these buses. And we don't have the built-in mass transit that some of these bigger cities, especially on the East Coast, have. But all of a sudden, we've got this entire busing route system that's designed to get you all over the different parts of the metro, and it's going to cost you, I think it's like $15. It's nothing compared to what some of these other big cities are talking about, and that's honestly because of the investment that people have put into this here in Kansas City.
Yeah, no. Let's get into the teams that are going to be coming to Kansas City, and let's reflect a little bit about the official World Cup draw.
Yeah.
Where were you? What do you remember about it? I was down at Power and Light. I was hosting a watch party at No Other Pub, and it was exciting. To me, it was a day that became the idea became real, and we figured out what teams are going to be playing games in Kansas City, and then a couple of weeks after that, we figured out what teams are going to be base camped in Kansas City. So let's give our listeners a rundown of all those teams and maybe give some commentary on that.
Yeah, so the first team you got to mention is Argentina. They're going to be playing the first game of their title defense in Kansas City. I was just looking on Instagram the other day, and there's some famous actress. I don't know my actors and actresses that well, but she's an Argentinian-American who grew up in L.A., and she was just doing a television interview the other day saying, well, I'm an Argentina fan, I'm a Messi fan, and I'm going to be in Kansas City when the World Cup starts because that's where Argentina is going to be. And I just think about that, and we can get to the fact that they're base camping here too, so that means that day in and day out, Lionel Messi and the entire Argentina country is going to be here. But they're going to play a couple games here. They might be playing a quarterfinal here against Portugal as well. But I've had the chance, Matt, to get to know some of the guys that I work with on Apple TV broadcasts. The Spanish language broadcasters are from Argentina. And I've become friends with them. And talking to them, looking at the videos and pictures that they show me from their time growing up, the tattoos they have on their arms about their favorite moments in Argentinian soccer history, that's a literal thing. The devotion to the game of soccer is at a level that I don't even think as a soccer fan I could have comprehended before I met these guys, and they're coming here.
It's insane. It's insane. I don't know if you could handpick another country to have come to Kansas City. Would you? I mean, I know there's a short list of probably 4 or 5 countries that you could argue are the biggest soccer nations in our world, but Argentina, lately, they're the defending World Cup champions, and they have the greatest soccer player of all time on their team. Mm-hmm. And they're playing their first game in Kansas City. That is absolutely wild to me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and when you ask, like, is there anybody I'd rather have, I think the only one that I could think of would probably be England.
Yeah.
And they don't have a game here necessarily, but they're going to base camp here.
Next best thing.
I mean, those guys are all going to be here too. Okay, so if we're going down the list just to the names of the teams that are going to play here, I don't know if we want to go through the actual. So you got Argentina versus Algeria. Algeria is going to base camp in Lawrence, Kansas. It's a massive country in Africa that has a history with the United States, going back to that incredible Landon Donovan goal. But they're going to be base camping here. That's the first game. The next game is Ecuador versus Curacao. Ecuador has a couple of the best players in the world, honestly, a couple of of midfielders that I think you would put up there with anybody in the world, and they've got a good soccer history. I'm going to be interested to see what their fan base is like when they get here. And Curacao is one of these countries. There's a few countries that are making it to the World Cup for the first time ever, in large part because the tournament's expanded to 48 teams, which is the biggest field that it's ever been. And I hear some of the stodgy old, grumpy folks that are traditionalists complaining that there's a team like Curacao in it because they might just get wiped out in each game. Maybe it's the NCAA tournament fan in me, but that to me, like when you see the celebratory scenes in an island nation of about 200,000 people, getting to be on this stage, just getting to be there is like winning a national championship for them. So I think it's actually awesome to see a country. So you got Argentina and you got Curacao, and they're both wonderful stories.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
don't sleep on these games with the smaller countries. I think people look at it and say, "Oh, that's not going to be a good game." Don't sleep on that. You could go to that game and have just as good of an experience, maybe even better in some ways, because when the people that go to these games, you will witness pure joy and happiness and celebration of their country. The pride that these people have just to be on this world stage will be unlike anything you've ever seen before. And that's a really cool thing to witness. Like you can just see the way they will be standing and cheering for their team for the entire 90 minutes, no matter what the score is. That is like how prideful they are to be supporting their country.
And the thing I love about the game of soccer, one of the things that really drew me to it was the World Cup, and it was because the game means something in every country on this planet. And it means something a little different, right? Like you go to Argentina, and it is this very serious, fanatical devotion to the game. In other countries, it's an expression of music and artistry and joy and all these things. You're going to see, all the guys that play for Argentina are multi-millionaires who play on the biggest stages in the world. Then you're going to see a country like Curacao where guys are school teachers and firefighters, and they're going to go play in the World Cup. I think that's amazing. And by the way, upsets happen. You know what I mean? Like in global sports, and they make movies about them when they happen, like Miracle and Cool Runnings and things like that. Who knows? Maybe Curacao goes out and gets their first ever win at the World Cup, and it happens in Kansas City, and they make a movie about it someday. Those are the types of things that can happen. Okay, after that, you got the Netherlands versus Tunisia. The Netherlands, another team that's going to base camp in Kansas City. This sounds like a put down, but I keep saying it. They're the Buffalo Bills of world football because they've made it to 3 finals.
Yep.
They've made it to more finals than any team that's never actually won the World Cup. They are capable of winning the World Cup. That's how good they are. They have been the pioneers of many different evolutions of the game of soccer from a coaching standpoint and the way you look at the game. Their fans are incredible, and they're going to be base camping here.
Yeah, great fan base, great history, talented team. I think they're in the mix to potentially win this World Cup. But you got to start with their fans. The orange is it the wall, orange wall or orange army?
The Oranja, I know they call it that. I can't remember if it's the orange. Let's see.
They'll obviously they're base camped in Kansas City, but when they play their match here in Kansas City, it will be an orange invasion. They will be taking over the streets, and that orange color,
the Orange Legion.
The Orange Legion. It really stands out. And they also have some history with the U.S. The Netherlands were the team that knocked us out of the last World Cup in 2022. So that's something to follow for sure.
This is a little plug for the book again, but there's a chapter in the book dedicated to Ted Lasso. And for those of you that have watched the show, there's an episode where Ted Lasso and the whole team are actually in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And he takes some magic mushrooms. He goes to an American-themed sports bar, and he has some Arthur Bryant's barbecue sauce at the sports bar, and he's watching 1990s Chicago Bulls on the video screens in the sports bar, and the swirl of all of this, and the triangle offense invented by Tex Winter from a Kansas State guy, makes him scribble a bunch of stuff down on his notepad about soccer, and he has all these concepts, and he draws it up based on triangles and all these things. He takes it to his assistant coach the next day, and he says, "Congratulations, you just invented total football," which the Dutch actually invented back in the 70s. And the connection between Kansas City barbecue, Tex Winter, the Chicago Bulls offense, and Dutch football is all going to come swirling together in Kansas City this summer. And I want to take every person from the Netherlands to Arthur Bryant's now and show them, like, by the way, you have a connection here that you probably didn't even realize. But they're going to do a march that starts at the Power and Light District. Their march to the match. If you want to just go ahead and Google that, that's where you see them all clad in their orange, bouncing from side to side as they do their song. And they're known for their fanatical, devotion to the team, but they are like the most fun-loving fan base.
Yep.
They seem to embrace the other team's fans in this like very playful, happy, joyous way, which is kind of like what you want it to all be about. So that's going to be a blast too.
It doesn't sound like the Buffalo Bills fans, but
the Bills Mafia, no.
Yeah, no, they got great fans too. Shout out to Buffalo. Come on, we can't hate them.
And so they're playing Tunisia. Tunisia, another country from Africa that I think is, I'm honestly, I'm just going to say this, I'm more curious.
Yeah, I don't know much about them.
I want to learn about them.
Same.
And then the other team that's going to be playing here is Austria. They take on Algeria. And I've got a cousin who lives in Austria. I've had a chance to visit Vienna and Salzburg. I will say it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. And they've had their ups and downs as a national team, but it's a country with an incredibly rich history. It's where the Sound of Music came from. I'm excited for Austria to come. They're probably not the highest team on my list, but the few people I know from Austria are great people, and they like to have a good time. Yeah.
They like to have a good time, and they're going to be excited to be supporting their team in Kansas City.
Okay, those are the teams.
We got to just touch on round of 32 and quarterfinals. So we named off 4 games. So Kansas City gets 4 group stage matches, and then we get 2 knockout stage matches. So one of those is on July 3rd, the round of 32, and then the big one, July 11th, is the quarterfinal match. One thing that I'll say, the difference between knockout stages and group stages. Group stage games are great. There's different storylines, and you're setting yourself up for the tournament. There's something different about knockout stage games, and that's just the reality. It's a do or die. It's sudden death. It is the intensity of the game. It's opened up. It's back and forth. To me, these are the most entertaining games, and specifically the quarterfinal games. Those are you're almost guaranteed to have a big team, a big country playing against another big country. But just when you look at the history of the best games in the World Cup, a lot of times they're quarterfinal matches.
So a couple of analogies. If you're listening to this show, we're hoping, like, if you're not like a diehard soccer fan, but you want to get into this World Cup, we can help you ease your way into it. So I'll make a couple of American sports analogies there. I mean, think Kansas City Chiefs regular season, and then think playoffs, right? That intensity of knowing it's over today if we don't win, right? Like, we're either going to the next round or we're going home is the difference between group stage and the knockout round.
And in soccer terms, that means you're not losing 2-1. You're either losing 4-1 or tying 2-2. Like, if you're losing, you're throwing everything to the wind, and you're either giving up a goal yourself or you're getting the comeback goal. There's no in between. There's no ties.
Yeah, if you fall behind, even if you're – because, like, you might be the underdog, but once you fall behind, you got to go try to score. Like, you have to go for it. Yeah. And there's no draw. So we're going to extra time. We're going to penalties. And people can love or hate penalties, but there's no more dramatic way to sort out a result that with such high stakes. And then the other analogy I'd make when you talk about quarterfinals, the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament's a quarterfinal, right?
Yep.
And I always look at the NCAA tournament like, by the time you get to the Elite Eight, there might be 1 or 2 Cinderellas, but for the most part, you've got teams that are legit capable of winning a title that are playing at this point. The matchups are good, the teams are great, and the stakes are that high. and what could be the quarterfinal. Do you want to talk about it? I mean, like what the actual potential matchup is for the quarterfinal here?
If things line up accordingly to how they are predicted to happen, Kansas City has the opportunity to host Portugal versus Argentina in the quarterfinal match being played in Kansas City, which arguably would be the greatest, biggest, most hyped soccer match in history. Not just World Cup history, not just this World Cup, in soccer history. That would be Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi in what's going to be their last World Cup, their last game against each other. I can't even wrap my head around if that happens or not.
Imagine if somehow in an alternate universe, Michael Jordan could have played against LeBron James for their national teams that were different. You know, I mean, that's the debates that people have all the time about
in their last game.
In their last, and like it's the last
NBA
one.
final. Yeah, it's everything is lining up. For it to happen.
Knock on wood. We're going to be. If you're rooting out there, you want Portugal and Argentina to win their groups.
That's what needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
Both those countries need to win their group
and then advance through the first knockout round.
Okay, good to know.
First couple knockout rounds, I guess, because it's round of 32, then round of 16.
Yeah.
So a lot has to happen, but they're both capable of it. They're both favorites, so
imagine
you got to manifest this thing.
What's
man.
that ticket going to go for?
A lot of people are saying more than the final itself.
Wow.
That's a prediction. I mean, ticket markets are, you don't know, but that's what a lot of people are suggesting. So we shall see. All right. On that note, we've set the table for who's coming. Now let's set the table for the U.S. and what they have in store, because the popularity of the sport in this country is oftentimes tied to how the national team's doing. So we'll do that after this. This is the Crossroads Soccer Show. And the Crossroads Soccer Show continues here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We are presented by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City. From here, for wherever you are, that's the benefit of blue. Visit bluekc.com/benefit of blue for more information. We're also brought to you by Michelob Ultra, the official beer sponsor of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Nate Bukaty, Matt Besler with you. We're going to be doing this show up all the way through the World Cup. We're going to have all kinds of great guests on to talk about all these things. We've been talking about how we got here, what's coming up in terms of Kansas City. Now let's talk about the USA. It's been a journey since you played in the last World Cup, in the World Cup in 2014. We failed to qualify the next cycle, which led us into this weird limbo for a long period of time where we weren't really getting ready for anything. We were trying to figure out what the next generation was going to be. Then we had this golden generation come through. I'm using quotes there, but that was the thought process, right? All these young guys that were now all of a sudden playing at the big clubs in Europe, which we hadn't had a full roster of that in the past. They went to the World Cup in Qatar, and I think they about met expectations. They got through the group, and then they got knocked out by one of the giants in the Netherlands, as you referenced earlier in the show. And then they didn't have to qualify for this World Cup because it's in the United States, which means they were an automatic qualifier. So we've been in this kind of weird limbo of playing a bunch of friendlies and other competitions with a change in the manager. They brought Greg Berhalter back. Then they bring in Mauricio Pochettino, who's Argentinian, but taking over the American job. And I think it's really hard for a lot of us to know where this team is and what this team is going into this World Cup.
I think if I had to describe my emotion, I don't know if this is an actual emotion or not, but uncomfortably optimistic. I am uncomfortable with where I'm at right now, but I'm still optimistic. And I think that's different than what U.S. fans have come to expect with their teams. You referenced the World Cup that they played in last time in 2022, my World Cup that I played in 2014. There was a certain expectation that we had as a fan base of, okay, this is exactly what kind of team we have, and this is their ceiling. You kind of knew what the ceiling was, and you knew what you were going to get out of those teams. And that's exactly what the teams gave you. This team doesn't have that. We have no idea what's going to happen. This team have shown moments of brilliance where we can go toe-to-toe with the best in the world, and we can potentially go and win this thing. And we've shown other moments where it's like, man, we're going to be lucky to win a game. We're going to be lucky to score a goal. What are we doing? Have we ever played before? And so the floor and the ceiling is wider than it's ever been, and there's a lot of unpredictability that goes into this team in this World Cup. And so I think that's why I think a lot of fans are uncomfortable like me, and we're not used to this feeling. We know what the American team should play like, and we know what they look like, and there's some consistency with this team historically, and we just don't have that with this group. So, again, I don't know how that makes you feel. I don't know what that means. I can say that it's exciting because we don't know what's going to happen, and the ceiling is definitely as high as it's ever been. But again, I just I don't know. It makes me. It's fun to have these conversations, and I think with this team, there's been more back and forth and more debate and more animosity and criticism towards this team. And the reason is because I don't think that they've found who they are, and nobody knows who they are yet. Does that make sense?
100%. I would say that if I'm being honest, I'm very worried about what this team is right now. I don't have a ton of confidence. But all that being said, I want to carry that hope that they're going to find an identity, that it is going to click, that playing on their home soil and you know, just the opportunity that lies in front of them, it's going to come together and they're going to go on a run. They've got the talent to be a good team in this World Cup. A lot of the players that they'll be counting on are being counted on at big clubs in the world, playing with big pressure, right? Like in the biggest competitions that professional soccer has. So they shouldn't be overawed by the stage. They shouldn't be overawed by the competition. But because of this weird stretch, we've been left to judge this team based on a whole bunch of friendlies. And my stance on spring training baseball, preseason football, when you're not trying to win the game as the ultimate motivation, it's almost impossible to truly judge what you're seeing. I say that all the time. You know, spring training numbers, okay, so a guy hit 350 in spring training. How many times you see that guy then go out and he bats 100 for the first month of the baseball season? You know, it's different than when you're actually trying to win the game. I'll use an example. 2018, when the U.S. did not qualify for that World Cup. France, if I remember correctly, won that World Cup. They played a friendly right before the World Cup, a tune-up, against the United States, who hadn't even qualified, and they played to a draw. At that time, you would be like, well, what a terrible result for the French. What's their problem? You know, they got all this talent. They only drew the U.S., didn't even make the World Cup. It was a friendly beforehand. No one remembers that. No one cares. All these friendlies that we've been playing for the past 4 years, no one's going to care about once this World Cup happens. It's only going to matter what they do in these games. If they go get through the group and win a knockout round game or two, it's going to be remembered as this incredible run and this great team, and everyone's going to, I mean, it's going to be a footnote what happened in the friendlies. But it's all we have to judge the team by. So when we're judging them, one of the things, as you said, that the U.S. has always had in the past, in my mind, is an identity. This is how they're going to play. This is what they're going to hang their hat on. If they're going to win, it's going to be through this recipe. With Mauricio Pochettino, it's been a different formation almost every time. It looked like they had settled on, hey, we're going to play 3 in the back, 3 defenders on the back line. And it worked really well for a couple friendlies. Then they came back for the last window, and they didn't play that. And they changed things around, and it went really poorly in terms of the results. So I don't know what the identity of the team is. I don't know how they're going to try to go about winning games. And that makes you really nervous, I think. But that doesn't mean they can't put it together when this World Cup actually starts.
I think you're spot on. When the World Cup starts, it's go time. So anything that's happened in the past, it doesn't matter, good or bad, or in between. So uncomfortably optimistic. That's going to be what I stand by. So let's just hop into this group stage real quick for the U.S., just so the listeners, if you haven't heard, U.S. plays 3 group stage games. First game is against Paraguay on June 12th, and then on June 19th, they will play Australia, and then finally their third place or their third group stage game will be against Turkey. And how do you pronounce
Turkey as well?
Turkey?
Yeah.
And that's how everyone else pronounces it now.
That's
right?
how they want to be pronounced.
Okay,
now.
Turkey.
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher that up until the game.
I'm probably not doing it 100% correct.
So I look at this group, and this is a winnable group. And I don't know if you can ever have said that before with the groups that the U.S. has been. This is winnable. Like, the mentality of this group has to be, we're going to win. We're not going to survive. We're not going to, slip into the knockout stage. Let's go win the group. We are capable of winning this group. When I look at these teams, all the teams are a little different. Every game's going to be difficult, blah, blah, blah. But on paper, this is a winnable group. Do you agree?
Of course, and a lot of that is because the U.S. is in pot 1. That's the top-seeded teams. So they got seeded against teams that were in lower pots because they're a host nation. So we got a favorable draw, not because we earned it, but because of the fact that we're hosting the World Cup. So now you got to take advantage of that. One interesting thing, and we're going to run out of time here on this show, Matt, but we'll dive into these teams more as this show continues. We're just getting started on this. We've actually played all 3 of these teams in friendlies here recently. Beat Paraguay, beat Australia, got hammered by Turkey. They were all friendlies. So I don't know how much we could take from any of those things. Turkey's got the biggest high-end talent of the 3 teams. Paraguay and Australia, while the United States are better than them, they will be tough teams that will make themselves tough to beat. The U.S. is going to have to go out and actually do it and beat them.
Absolutely. I would love to dive in. I know we can't do it on this show, but all 3 of those teams, like you said, we've played them recently. I've personally played against all 3 of these nations as well, and they have certain characteristics that I would love to share.
So we're going to get into that as the show. We're just getting started here. This is the Crossroads Soccer Show. We're going to have a lot of time as we've got about a month and a half to get ready for the World Cup. We're going to break down all these matchups. We're going to have great guests. We're going to take the show on the road. We're going to be brought to you by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City and Michelob Ultra. Any final thoughts, Matt, before we sign off on this one?
No, I'm excited to get this going.
This is the Crossroads Soccer Show on Sports Radio 810 WHB.